because they were answered during the spring. When we're done with that, we'll talk a little bit of NFL draft and where the Sooners land on that. It's Sooner Intel time. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Sooner Intel. I'm one of your hosts, Jason Watkins, along with my co-host, Mr. Mason, Chris Mason from Sooners 360. Kchris will be along when he gets here. But if you love college football, especially them Oklahoma Sooners, you're in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button, like our videos, and don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss a moment. The Sooner Intel, Mr. Mason, welcome to the show.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. How's everybody going on your end? How was your trip?
My trip was good. I went to Chicago to see my mom and was able to get a couple of podcasts in, and it was a good trip. The Chicago weather sucked, of course, because that's what Chicago does. But other than that, it was a good trip. It was good to see my brothers and see my mom. So spent a little time with the Chicago familia.
Good stuff. Welcome in, everybody. Make sure you are hitting that like button as you come in. We got a lot of people in here. Give us some comments. Let us know you're in the building. Shout out yourself. Make sure you hit that like button as you come in as well. Mr. Mason, we talk about lots of questions that have been on the minds of all Sooner fans, coming into the spring. Now that spring's over, I mean, you have the questions: is John Mateer going to be able to lead the way? Is Are they going to have an actual running game this year coming around? Basically, most of those things have been in the by the way of you know what's the offense going to do. But I think there's been some defensive questions as well. But what questions were asked and answered as far as you're concerned coming in? And welcome into the show from the Horns Down podcast, Kchris Griffin. What up, Kchris?
What's up? What's up?
So from my perspective, I think the question we all basically we delved deep into this issue prior to spring, right after the Alabama game, was that was OU going to make a commitment to updating their run game? Was OU going to make a commitment to doing things differently in the run game? Were they going to integrate integrate the advice of Dalen McCullough, Kevin Wilson? Was Arbuckle gonna listen to some of the experienced voices in the program? And was OU going to make a consistent, concerted effort to improve the running game? And I don't know what we'll get this fall, right? Because you can only accomplish in spring what you can accomplish in spring, right? I mean, OU can't win games in spring, right?
Sure.
I mean, but I think from my perspective, and I'd love to hear you guys, because both of you were able to go to the spring game and you guys had a chance to talk about that. I think from at least if we're giving A's for effort, we got to give OU an A for effort in terms of emphasis, commitment, and trying to redesign the running game. So based upon everything I've heard from you guys, Gabe and Teddy, my sources that were at some practices, OU made a serious effort in spring to rebuild and retool their running game. So I'm going to give them an A for they said they were serious about it, and they showed they were. I mean, execution is a whole other side of it, and what we'll see. But I think when you're talking about, outside zone, a lot of the plays, we're hearing a lot about plays under center. They didn't show it in the spring, but we heard that enough from Gabe Ike and other
Right.
folks that we know it's there. To me, that's the biggest question: did OU retool their running game in spring? And to me, based upon everything we've seen and heard, it wasn't the same. They weren't. It wasn't like Insanity, right? Insanity's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting results to be different, right? So the
Absolutely.
running game didn't work last year, and OU clearly has made a change to overhaul, update, modify, whatever adjective you'd like to use. The
Well,
running
and
game, the running game. So I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts.
yeah, and obviously having been at the spring game with K. Chris, and I mean we've sat and talked about quite a bit of this stuff on the way back to your house, K. Chris. But talk about what you saw in the running game. Right off the bat, you sent you put those videos out there to Twitter, what you were seeing. You know, talk about what you saw and what excited you the most, because I've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I want you to kind of get that perspective out there.
I think the formations first and foremost kind of poke out to you like a sore thumb. Being able to have two tight ends on the field, you got twin sets, you got a lot of different motions that are going on. It's not necessarily so much wide receiver focus, right? Like there's a lot of movement, a lot of different things going on. It's eye candy stuff, right? You guys know I always talk about one game that is a thorn in everybody's side, especially mine. But you go back to that first year, 22 season when Kansas State came to town, right? What did they kill us with? What did Colin Klein kill us with that game? A lot of motion, a lot of different things right there at the line. No, wasn't really even a wide receiver. It was mostly your tight ends and your running backs, right? I mean your fullbacks, right? So just something right there is a new wrinkle that he can add in there. Arbuckle and gang. You look at the running backs, you look at the running games. I think not only just the commitment, but also just the fact of I think that they've kind of simplified it, guys. And that's what that wide zone is. What a lot of those different things do. But in my opinion, Jason and Chris Mason, they kind of simplified it for the guys. It's mainly now see the hole go, like shuffle, do different things like that if you need to kind of find your way behind your blocker or whatnot. But we're trying to get some yardage. We're trying to actually go downhill once we see that cut. And I think that's what a few guys on the team they're going to have to break some habits. You kind of got a mix of freshmen to kind of sophomores and upperclassmen last year who for
Right.
DeMarco or whatnot. And DeMarco is a good coach and all the rest of that stuff, but it's a change in philosophy now. It's no longer, you're no longer just sitting there just kind of weeding through the traffic, trying to run through the trash. You're, hey, if there's a hold there, please run, right? Please go. Like hit it. Let's go. But I think that the philosophy changes some of the different things they want to do. As far as like we didn't necessarily see them under center, but if you watch some of the quarterbacks like early on, if you were there at the spring game, you would have saw just them kind of just going through the motions of what would be kind of under center or kind of what their handoffs would be and kind of in that wide zone, different things like that. So again, I think the thing that excited me the most was just the formations that we came out in, how not necessarily exotic you can get, but just the looks that you can give off of that, and then the fact that we all know Mateer can be a threat with his legs, so that's on the other side of it, right? So it's a lot of different things that you want to see, a lot of different things that you still have to have some conclusion, some answers about. But again, I that's what I was most excited about. But as far as the run game, man, I thought it looked solid, especially when guys made a decision. I thought Walker was really good at that, kind of declaring what he was trying to do. Hatton, I thought that once he kind of figured it out that, hey, I could just hit the hole instead of trying to keep it wide, trying to jump cut, different things like that. I could just hit and I can just go and make my cut. I think that's whenever he looked really good. You got to wonder what a guy like Blaylock, who has that home run speed, looks like doing that. You got to wonder what X Rob looks like as well coming out there, because I think out of everybody, he's the best of both worlds. He's kind of what the freshman can give you, but he's also, I wouldn't necessarily say he has Blaylock speed, but he can do that as well and burn you too. We've seen him do it plenty of times. So it's going to be interesting at run game what they want to do. They have the backs. I think that you have 4 to 5 backs. Lord Avant, I thought that he was really good out there. He was really solid.
Woo.
I didn't necessarily say like I wouldn't necessarily say he's a a game changer, but he's somebody that say, hey, I'm fine with handing the rock to this guy. He's
Absolutely.
going to make good decisions, good plays, and we're going to be able to do some stuff. I think the one thing that you're hoping that you carry over, or that they're working through and working on during the summer and in fall camp, and I'll pass this off to you guys. I'll say this last thing is, I think it's just getting the offensive line and the running backs on the same page as far as like, hey, see hole go, declare go, make your cut go. Don't bounce it to the outside unless that is a clear path. And I know there was a couple of times some guys tried to bounce it to the outside, and that's not necessarily what that play is calling for. Get what I'm saying? So I think
Yeah.
that's the one thing that if we clean up, we'll be fine with it. But I do think this is going to be pretty beneficial to what OU is trying to do and their overall goal.
Obviously, Giuseppe Walker was kind of the guy that everybody kind of looked at and saw. I mean, he had the breakaway runs, the couple of big runs there early in the game, in the spring game, and he's the one everybody seems to be talking about the most out of the freshman guys that have come in. I like Lloyd Avon as well, and I'm really I've become a, Jacob Hatton definitely looked the part as well, breaking tackles, able to, to kind of run through trash. But they kind of all do. I think that you've got a mix, and I think this is kind of what, when you've got a running back room, you want a mix of guys that do different things, right? You don't need a bunch of dudes that are all the same. So I think it's been a kind of a blessing, I think, for most OU fans, and for the team as well, that you've got some guys that you've got the speed, the quickness, the moves, and then you've got guys that'll put their, drop that shoulder into you and go. And then when you got a guy like Tory Blaylock, when he gets back, we noticed that he could run them hard yards too. Plus, he's explosive. I think that one of the things that the questions that get answered for me, if you're going to run the ball like this, I think it's a great opportunity for the guys that you expected to be really good. Like coming back in, Tory Blaylock, obviously Xavier Robinson. We've talked a lot about the thing about X Rob is that injuries have been a problem for him the whole way. Tory played the whole season with injuries, but X Rob he's missed some time. Want to see him get healthy. I hope he is going to be healthy, but because I think that you could find yourself odd man out if you don't, come into this season healthy, because there's some dogs in that room, and they're doing some different things. But I love the idea of giving these guys better opportunities to run the football behind a better O line, a tougher O line, and these tight ends that we're seeing out there, and basically in 12 personnel most of the day, right? Right, K. Chris. I mean, you didn't. It was rare that you didn't see at least two of those guys out there. You're muted.
One other thing that I want to point out to everybody as well. I know everybody's wide zone, this and that. Inside run did not go anywhere. That is still a big part of the offense. I
But
think,
you saw them kind of countering it back, right? It was
yeah,
like it was they were pushing that wide zone out there and then cutting back against the grain, which was, something that Gabe and Teddy talked about on Sunday after the spring game was over with, was that, you saw them do some things, um, that the defense has to move. They weren't just able to stay in their spot.
yeah.
They had to move left and right in order to kind of stick with it, which is a big move. I think that that's important. So I get what you're saying. They're gonna definitely run up the middle, but I also think that I think that they're doing it different is all.
Yeah, no, they are doing things a lot differently. I mean, that's something that was very noticeable when you're out there. I think that the inside run game needs to be stronger. It should be stronger, but I still think that, again, it's just getting I think the running backs used to this style of running, which is just, hey, let's get back to the whole, once you sit at a hole, you go. Once you make your cut, once you declare, be determined, full speed ahead, go. It's not necessarily kind of just weeding through the traffic. And I think that's where we kind of got in trouble, to Jason's point, these last couple of years with kind of, DeMarco's style, was that teams weren't necessarily moving. You're trying to run against your blocker, and I mean, it was a thing that for me watching
They're just kind of
Sawchuck.
waiting in the hole for you, right?
Yeah, and that just was never Sawchuck's game, in my opinion. He was never going to be Kennedy Brooks. He was more of a downhill runner, jet speed guy that get once he hits that top speed, he's gone, right? And we saw that from time to time when he could find the hole, but a lot of the times where he was just kind of weeding through traffic, for whatever reasons, he's running right up the offensive line's ass. So I mean, it, there were times where and he would make plays off of that from time to time, but you would think that he'd be stuffed, and then all of a sudden he finds outside, and then there he goes for another 30 yards, right? But at the same time, I think that scheme served its purpose for a while, but or not even scheme, but just that running style. But I think that this may actually help, and I know somebody in the chat put it in there a few pods ago, but everything about this offensive staff screams downhill, and I think that's what you're going to get mostly this year out of the run game, which I'm all for.
Yeah, and I mean, downhill doesn't necessarily. Okay, Mr. Mason, I'm gonna come to you. Downhill doesn't necessarily mean that you can't start it outside and get downhill, because, and I think that we haven't stretched the defense near enough when it comes to that kind of stuff, and made cornerbacks have to make business decisions. Safeties, and linebackers have to get off their mark as well and have to move over there and still, be able to be in coverage. Look, I mean, and I think that's the reason why your passing game was so one one dimensional when it all boiled down to it. It was Satania or nothing for the most part. You know what I mean? And so I think that has a big thing. But go ahead. What are your, obviously that was a big important piece, was what they're doing. They brought up in there about the duo play. You definitely saw that. Definitely saw that. And so, and duo is one of those plays that you're going to run it up the middle. You know what I mean? So that's another one of those that you're going to hit the middle for it, but you're going to have some blocks that kind of spring guys open, and you've got guys that can get explosive because of that, I think.
Yeah, I'm just happy that again we wanted them to retool and reimagine the running game, and everything that you guys have said and everything that we've heard prior to the spring game indicates they have that from that they hired Dylan McCullough, right? And when the moment he was hired, we talked about his hiring, and we said, you don't hire this guy and not integrate his feedback on how the running game should look. And it looks like his fingerprints are all over it. It looks like, we said we wanted to see some Kevin Wilson. We wanted to see Kevin Wilson being engaged and providing some feedback. It looks like that's working too, and that was involved as well. So to me, it just seems like that Arbuckle, he's a younger offensive coordinator. It just seems like to me that he's not so ideologically wedded to some system like Lebby is, that he's been willing to fine tune and change some stuff. And I do think that, Chris said this, last year when he was watching Washington State. Let me say that as clearly as I can, that we need, Arbuckle wanted to run some two tight end stuff basically from Washington State and some other things. It's clear that he wants to do some two tight end stuff as a response to the bigger defenses, faster defenses, whatever terminology you want to use, in the SEC, and we just did not have the players. And I think, question number two, might be when Jason gets back is, has the hiring of Witten and the transfer portal transformed that tight end game? And I would say that question was answered authoritatively in spring and all through spring, right? We now have three guys that we can play at tight end who would have started last year. And Jason Witten appears to be putting his stamp on the tight end room, how they block, how they work. And all the feedback we're getting from Witten is also that he's talking to Buckle. Buckle's talking to him about how the run, how things should work, and that Buckles, using all of the smart minds in the room to help rebuild the offense, and at tight end, I mean, it's just, I don't know what other superlatives or adjectives you want to use. It's just we simply now appear to have three tight ends who can really play. Trinae Washington apparently, had a very positive spring. What he can do over the summer and in August means we could maybe go four deep. From that perspective, and he's a bigger guy. He's 260. We're no longer crippled at a position, to use a kind of an over the top term, and that trickles down to everything else with the run game and the pass game, because it looks to me, I know you guys said that Rocky Beers was pretty impressive in the spring game. That's what everybody else said, and that you go two tight end, he's going to leak out and be a target for Mateer, an easy point guard pass for Mateer to get yardage.
Well, yeah, and you saw him do that. You did see him do that. I mean, the play that he fumbled on, which was a great play, by the way, by Man, to pop that ball out of there. But they had both of those guys on the same side, no receiver to that side. He ends up motioning into the play, motioning out from the slot, and the play started right there. He runs a quick out. He was, probably could have gotten some yards. I mean, that was a great play by Omarion, obviously, to make that play and punch the ball out. And you obviously want him to hold on to the football there, but I mean, sometimes guys just make plays, man. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it looked like one. I mean, it's something new, something that we hadn't really seen a lot of anything like that. And for a lot of the day, you didn't see a large amount of receivers in the game. It was more, you were gonna again a lot of two tight end stuff,
Which you can only do if you actually have tight ends that deserve to be on the field. I mean,
Yeah, and I mean that goes to what you're saying about Jason Witten, is that obviously he's definitely put his stamp on this program early on.
I think the interesting thought is, what does that combination look like this year? We got a glimpse of it, just kind of short game, very reminiscent of what I hate to do it, but very reminiscent of kind of what Riley would do with his H backs. Honestly, just kind of getting them out of the backfield in space, go making plays. And I mean, I think that you have the tight ends who can do that this year, especially. But one thing I will say, especially early in the season, guys, they made an effort to try to put two tight ends on the field. Not, or excuse me, I wouldn't say two tight ends on the field, but they made an effort to try to feature the tight end. Obviously, we all know and love what Kanik was able to do for, especially that early part of the season. But you got to go back and think, man, Huggins, right? Huggins was on the field an awful lot, and it just felt like he and Mateer were never able to really connect, right?
Well, and they weren't able to block either.
Yeah,
Man,
they weren't
these
able
guys were not blockers.
they weren't able to block. And don't get me wrong, there was a couple of times where you kind of felt like Mateer overthrew him, but then kind of in hindsight, after looking at the play, you're like, I think he was running the wrong route, right? So it was just kind of a mix of things whenever you kind of started going down. When Caden Helms got back, the blocking got better, but at the same time, he just wasn't necessarily the threat that um, I mean that I almost said Hanson, but he wasn't a threat that Kanik was, right? So in the past game, so I think that's kind of where things kind of tailored off, right? You kind of traded, for more blocking opposed to pass catching with that. Not saying they couldn't, but it's just that wasn't necessarily his forte in his time here. So I don't know. I think it's interesting to see. What I'm basically my point is that Arbuckle showed a willingness, right? He showed a willingness to try to involve the tight end in this offense to really get that piece of the offense going. Now, what does that look like whenever as we sit here today, we feel like we have a legit tight end room. What does that look like now that you actually have that, and then also the mind and the wit of a Jason Witten, right? That has to bode well going into this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just it's again it as much as you love Jason Witten, it does give you that nagging feeling of why wasn't a tight end coach change made earlier, right? I mean, the difference we're seeing does give you just a little bit of that, but moving towards tomorrow, not grinding axes on grievances of yesteryear. Yeah, and I think so. Then you've got, and then I think the last sort of big offensive question that we were really looking for well, there's two really, but Jason, I mean, I know that we talked Saturday night, and again, you can only grade what you can do and what you can do in spring, right? It certainly looks like Mateer is putting out the effort to improve his decision making, improve his pocket play, and trying to throw it at a higher angle, get more loft on the ball, get a little more arc on the ball. So he's certainly working on all these things. What we get in the fall when the bullets fly, we
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
yeah, and it's like kind of like what I said on Saturday. It's like there's only so much that John Mateer could do, right? There's he's if he can't come out here and look, even if you look like Tom Brady, at his best or whatever, in the spring game, it still doesn't matter. But the only thing that and shout out to Kchris for saying this is like he's doing everything he's been asked to do. We're asking him for this. He's putting in the work. And it showed that he was putting in the work. Now what happens when the bullets fly against Michigan, and then in week 4 against Georgia? Those are going to be different things, right? Those are obviously going to be different things, but and that's when you really have to prove it, is when you get into these, you've got weeks 2, 4, and 6, those are the weeks that we need to see him do the best. But you did see him, and Kchris, I want you to kind of go on this one too. You saw him kind of changing the speed a little bit. You saw little layered balls here and there. Wasn't just the fastball. And so, that was important to at least kind of see that, because we didn't see it at all last year.
There was a throw, kind of on a crossing route, to McKenzie. Is it Aline? Is that how you
Yeah,
say his last
yeah.
name?
Yeah, Mac
Um,
Allen. That's a
yeah,
bad dude, bro.
there was a throw. There was a throw Mateer tried to kind of layer in there, and if McKenzie Allen catches that, you're looking at that and saying that's an NFL throw. It was a mix between kind of kind of a touch pass, but also a little bit of a bullet as well, and he put it pretty much on the money. I think if that's a Livingston, a Petit, I kind of feel like they come down with that. Who else am I forgetting? Manny Choice. I kind of feel like your taller wide receivers probably come down with that. It's definitely a competitive play because defense was on him. Second unit was they defended that play really well. But if he comes down with that, that's one of those throws that Jason is talking about. As far as like, hey, we saw NFL throws from this guy. Don't get me wrong. There were times in the game where you're just kind of like, that not necessarily a bad read, but that's kind of a bad throw. The
The
bad
missing
reads,
Parker Livingston on that would have been a touchdown. You would have liked to have seen a better
yeah,
throw there, but at least he threw it deep.
yes. The decision making wasn't necessarily an issue. It wasn't like BV was throwing a lot of crazy stuff at him on the back end, anyways.
Yeah,
But
he kind of, yeah. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, he was on the money for the most part with whatever he was doing. The decision making wasn't really or wasn't flawed. What it was
He
just a
definitely
couple of
didn't hold
errant
back on
throws.
what he threw at Bo Bentley.
Yeah, it was a couple of errant throws out there by Mateer, but I mean for the most part, man, the touch, all the rest of that stuff. And again, I know we talk about the arm motion, and I agree with Jason. I know my uncle, he agreed with Jason, because he even said, Jason, he was like, I agree with him. When the bullets start flying, some of those tendencies will pop out. They will do that,
They probably will. Yeah,
but at the same
but
time,
he had his feet underneath him though,
yeah,
Chris.
the arm
That's
motion.
different.
Yeah, that wasn't really necessarily the issue. I mean, one of the really cool things you saw from Mateer was him climbing up the pocket and and delivering strikes, right? Climbing up the pocket, keeping his foundation, keeping his feet under him. And again, I do think that the arm motion, it does matter from time to time, especially on those deep balls, different things like that. Because again, if it doesn't show you anything else, it just shows you that hey, this kid is finally healthy. He can finally throw, right? That thumb is not necessarily an issue anymore. He's climbing up the pocket. They're keeping a clean pocket for the most part, but even at that, he's climbing through the mess. He's not trying to fight for his life, or he's having to scramble like he was at the Tennessee game, right? Trying to make all those games or whatnot. But again, I was happy. I thought it was a solid day from him. I mean, we got to see a large sample size because they kept that first team offense on the field for quite a while.
Yeah, you didn't really see him go to Wit and then or Jet until like what, late third, when they started putting those dudes in, like middle late third. So yeah, you got a lot out of them, and I mean, obviously, again, like Bo Bentley, he got all the action he wanted, for sure. Running with that second unit and having to go up against the number one defense the whole time, it was rough on him. But and he didn't look good. But I think that you needed to see that as well. He needed to see that as well to get an idea of what it's like under fire from a real SEC defense. And just so happens this is the best one. Make no mistake, this is the best one. At the end of the day, if you're I think the question, that's one of the questions that I think was being asked. Is he going to be the number two guy going into the season? I would take a strong step backwards before I started saying that right off the bat, because you know when you saw Witt in there, he made some good throws. He even scrambled. I mean, he looked slow, but I mean, the dude took off and had some and got what, 20 yards on that one scramble. It wasn't bad. He kind of rolled out of the pocket, got away from trouble and ran. And then he put a couple of balls in good spots too. I mean, he's got a big arm. He's a big guy. I don't think that you need to rush Bo Bentley into action at any point. You know what I mean? I just don't.
No, I mean, I think obviously Bo had a very productive spring based upon everybody that was talking about the stuff that they got to see. I think the spring game was a little bit like Brent just bringing him crashing down to earth in terms of how much work you got to do, right? You did great this spring, right? You were fantastic, but
Yeah.
let's have here's your final exam, and you're gonna fail it. But the next time you'll be better. Your next time you'll be better, right? You're gonna build them up to break them down,
Sure.
those kind of things. So I think that was so it'll be an ongoing battle through the
But I think
summer.
in the case of, if it's an emergency and you got to break the glass, I don't think you want to break that glass. I think you need to go. I think you need to try to go. I mean, if you're
Yeah,
still
yeah,
trying to win football games, my thought is you probably want to go with the guy that's been around for a little while.
yeah. I think you're right. It sets up the summer legit competition. If Bentley thought that maybe he was number two coming out of spring, you erase that, and Bentley needs to work his ass off against
Sure.
Neubauer to get better and better. Yeah,
And he's got some skills. I'm not saying he's not skilled or anything like that. I think he throws a good ball. I just think that, obviously the game was moving awfully fast for him.
yeah, and Brent was making him see ghosts and all those,
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
mean,
Yeah.
and to your point, I mean, that might be the best. That might be the best secondary he sees. It might be the best linebacker core he sees, and it might be
Defensive line.
yeah, the best pass rush combo. I mean,
Yeah, bro.
and to move on to like the last offensive question. I know we've been kind of talking a little bit, but to me, the most positive question answered so far this spring, other than the run game retooling and Mateer working on what he can work on, was that the first team O line looks impressive. Right now, once you get beyond those six dudes, things are a little tight. They got some work to do, but I think that's probably true for most college football teams out there. I doubt anybody really has like 8 or 9 O linemen they really feel confident about. Most teams are, yeah. I mean, most teams
Well,
are
you would
repeat.
definitely hope that they get something going. I think that you've got 8 or 9 dudes that you should be able to play.
Yeah, but it's clear the top 6 are the top 6 right now,
No
and
doubt, no
and they
doubt.
should be from an experience standpoint. So I think I think that was the big thing is that the top 6 guys for the most part got to stack practice after practice together. Some chemistry and continuity was established, and the guys were starting. I mean, Harris and Fasusi pretty much started every practice and went every practice at guard. I know Foji moved to right tackle to get some reps out there, I think, in the spring game.
He did.
And he might have done that in some practices. But overall, when you're looking at the offensive line we're returning, and OU's returning 5 guys that have played a lot, 6 guys that have played a lot. Amarian Harris is new, but he's very much having a. I'm getting this the feedback I was getting from folks is that they think Amarian Harris is very much like the Rouse kid from Stanford, who
He's a
came in
stud.
who came
He's
in
a
in
stud, man.
23, teamed with Guyton, and basically your tackles were set.
A lot of experience there, man. A lot of experience
And he
there.
looks really good. He's Bill's coaching him up. That OU looks like they're in a good spot with their first team offensive line, and the depth is obviously an issue. Noah Best had a good spring as backup center. Schmidt got some good reps in. I mean, that their ceiling is just going high. Peyton Joseph, and it sounded like my sources said Darius Afalava had a good second half of spring. That he's starting to get the rust off the knee injury and starting to look better. So I think there's some
Yeah,
pieces.
and he's got an attitude, man. He'll block his grandma, as you said last year.
Yeah.
He'd knock
So,
her down.
but I
Yeah,
think based upon what you guys saw, the O line it seems to be where the big question is: does Bill still have his fastball O line wise?
It,
And the feedback I got, I'll drop off it just as Chris is it seems like his fastball's back. Like 2 years of Tommy John surgery, it looks like his fastball's back a little
yeah.
bit.
And that's yes, that's a great example. One thing I would definitely say, just to add on to that, is the simple fact of if there's 2 positions on this team where you kind of factor in guys outside of the main rotation, it would be corner and offensive line. Now, offensive line has kind of been out of necessity because of the injuries that we've been plagued with these last couple of years. But I think that there are some guys that are going to develop into, potentially they may be a part of that rotation at some point, right? Like there's a good chance, especially with 9 games for red shirts and all the rest of that stuff. So we'll just see. But hopefully we can have a healthy season. I think that that's the thing that I'm really excited about for this team is that when's the last time we've been able to go into an actual season? Now, hopefully, I do not jinx us, but when is the last time we've been able to go into a season? I mean, just stock, right?
yeah. Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't say that.
It's such an outlier.
Just be shh. Don't do it. Don't do it, man. But I think I almost feel like there may be better depth than what right now it looks like because a lot of these guys that were injured last year, that were young last year and didn't really get an opportunity, are now getting opportunities. At least in the, I mean, you know who your top 5 guys are. They are, you do. You know who your top 6 guys are, but you still got to have other dudes. You have to because
It's a
and
long
especially if
season. Long
you're going to be
season.
running the football. If you're going to be running the football, there's going to be a lot of car accidents going on. So you need at least 7, 8 guys that you can rely on. I think they have that. I just don't think that they've necessarily. I mean, it's spring. There's a lot of time in the summer that they got to work on some stuff, and then obviously fall camp comes around, and I think that you're going to have at least a few more guys that are going to be able to step into situations and be able to spell somebody, or if you have an injury, that can step in there and you don't have a huge drop off. But I think you're right. I think the question about whether or not you know Big Bill lost his fastball. I think that's hilarious. But it's been certainly a point of emphasis among some in the fan base. So you know
It's been a bad. It's been an average last 2 years on the offensive line. So
Sure.
the comments were certainly there. The injuries were certainly there. I'm just happy, like I said, that basically other than Foji being nicked up, everybody went old spring every rep. Just continuity and chemistry between the guys. That was a big point Amarian mentioned in interviews. Eddie Pierre Louis is showing some leadership. Gabe Eichert mentioned that one of the backs missed a hole that Eddie was creating, and he kind of barked at the running back like, "Dude, I just set stuff up for you. You missed it." I just think it's in terms of what you could get accomplished in spring. It was highly effective in terms of what we saw from O line development from the starters. Fasusi looks great. Harris looks great. And McCullough may have had the best spring according to various folks. That's where we are. So I guess Jason, I guess do we feel like OU established the defensive depth they needed to this spring? I think that's the big spring question.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think when you see what Nigel Smith looks like, when you see what Trent Wilson looks like, when you see what you've got some freshman guys that are looking really good as well. With as far as Jake Krell and obviously Tank Carrington, they both were flashing in that game. You also you know going back and obviously we've been saying this. Danny Okoye is a problem. Sooner Cowboys in here, or not Sooner Cowboys, but that's weird. Beagle's bodyguards in here talking about Colin Simmons. Get ready, big boy, because there's some guys coming in and going to be chasing Arch down too. It love it. I can't wait. And you got many questions on that offensive line there in Texas. I think that they continue to go out and get guys, and their floor is higher because there's dudes that they are expecting are gonna contribute and are contributing because of the fact that you had Stoney and Jay Jackson out for injuries for the spring. They're getting opportunities that they might not have gotten otherwise, and they're making good on them. Yes, their depth is good there. I'm not worried about what we saw. The linebackers seem good. I think that when you've got Kip and now you got Owen Heineke coming back, I don't think that you're really losing much there. You know what I mean? If Nesta is what we keep hearing that he is, and then obviously you've got the transfer coming in. What's his name from Michigan?
Sullivan
Yeah, Cole Sullivan, who looked really good the other day. Um, Listen, yeah, they're fine. I think they're fine.
Yeah, the only issue I think would be I think cornerback depth is good. It's safety. That's the only issue, and really at safety, it's a little deceiving because OU can play Reggie Powers and Jeremiah Newcomb there as well. So,
Absolutely.
so
Plus, you still got
oh,
Peyton
right.
Bowen, who
Yeah.
Peyton Bowen and Boganowski is everywhere. You know,
Chris Mason, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think as the summer goes on, they get deeper into the install. I do believe Nico Jandro could be a factor there
At safety.
at safety.
I heard he had a
yeah,
great spring. He had a great
Yeah.
spring, and he was
yeah. I
healthy.
had forgotten about that too, but still, yeah. I think you've got guys, right?
Yeah.
I just depth wise, I just think that whatever questions were being asked about the depth and would they be able to produce the kind of season that they had last year or better? Yes, they can.
I think Jimmy and we didn't. I'm not sure that we saw any of this, but Jimmy, I think Sullivan's going to play a true Sam linebacker at times when OU needs to defend heavier formations, for lack of a better term. He'll play a true Sam backer. You'll have Owen, Kip, or maybe Nesta mixed in there as well.
Well,
I just think
I think so too.
I think you see Sullivan there. They can do some stuff with Danny Okoye too in a stand-up role if they want to go with a five-man front and play really big football with some folks.
Jeremiah Newcomb apparently they're still talking a lot about him as a cheetah, and even Eli Bowen.
Yeah,
We've heard people talk about that a lot too over the last few years, And we're talking these dudes are sticky, man. Him and Cortland are they sticky.
Yeah, Cortland apparently had a very good spring.
Fantastic day. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'm just going to ask you guys one last question, and we can maybe talk a little draft if you want. Um, Name your number one surprise guy from spring, and I'm gonna grab Tank Carrington. I did not see a freshman defensive tackle making this big an impression. I didn't think it would be Tank Carrington. I'll go public. I thought if we were talking about a freshman defensive tackle who's going to make a big impact, I thought it'd be Brian Harris. So to me,
Yep.
Tank Carrington looking as good and as big as he does, I
Yeah,
mean,
already hitting 300 pounds.
I mean
And I
it,
mean,
and he's got a burst to him. I mean, this is
yes.
I mean, as much as they let him play and as many plays as he's making, that was my big surprise from spring. So, Chris, who would you say was your? Now that I've stole one name from you, who would you say was the guy you're like, wow, that guy's got more than I thought. He's bringing more than I thought he would bring for this fall.
I named him earlier. I think it'd be the Allen kid. To be honest with you,
Okay.
I told Jason. I leaned up to him. I said, "Man, I said, the Jermichael Carters of the world. I said it's some other guys too that you can name." I said,
You
I
may
don't
not get your
know.
shot after all. You know.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. I was like, because that kid right there is going to be a problem. I was like, I believe Trell Harris will definitely be on the field this year. I believe Livingston will be on the field this year. I believe that Et Josiah Rogers, I believe they will be on the field this year.
Manny Choice is going to be on the field this year too.
Yes, Manny Choice, Satania.
That dude
I,
looks
I,
really good too, man.
I
By the
believe
way,
that those guys would be on the field, but that's a guy right there that is um, that could easily become your Drake Stoops type player where he's just really dependable. He knows the offense. I did not see him. I knew he know the offense, but I did not see him coming in here making plays like that and having a serious buzz. I thought he was a guy that would come here. Hey, you could sneak him in, maybe make him kind of a project player, and then see if he can really stick to it next year or so because he's young. But no, that kid has came out here and he's just one of those guys where you're like, hey, he's a glue guy. He's a guy that could be a part of your
runs
rotation.
really good routes, and he just man,
Yes.
he's clean. He's clean in and out. I mean, and he competes for the football. Yeah, he looks really good. Looks really good.
He could be a he's a guy that can be a glue guy. He can be the utility guy. He can be the guy that can be a possession receiver, but he also can go make a big play or two here and there. So it's a guy that you definitely need out there because he stabilizes everything because he's dependable and he gives material yet again another target or whatnot. I think
Isn't
that
Manny Choice zero?
He is.
yes,
Manny Choice is
Yeah,
zero. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just answering the question for
Yeah.
S4L. Um,
So
yeah, he's a
Jason,
stud too. Go
Jason,
ahead.
who would be who's your surprise guy? The guy coming out of spring, you're like, I wasn't expecting him to be that kind of a
Well, yeah,
factor
I
in the
mean, I
fall.
think it's easy to say, Mac, Mac for sure.
Okay.
But I think there's a lot of guys. I think there's some other dudes that you're just getting surprised by. I think number one, I did not expect. I definitely didn't expect. Um, I don't know that I expected either of the freshman D line guys to really make a mark. And from what it sounds like, Tank Carrington is. I mean, in what he's looked like, I mean, he's carved himself out at least some kind of time. And we know. I mean, they talked about it on Teddy and Gabe too. Is that that Todd Bates will play freshman. He doesn't care about that.
Yeah,
You
they'll
know, if
play.
they're
They'll
if they
play.
if they're
They'll
good enough
play.
to play, they'll play them. So, but I don't know that I have a ton of surprises on the defensive side. I guess it just doesn't surprise me that much when they're good because that's who they go get, and those kids want to come and play for Brent Venables. And like Bevo's bodyguard, you're out of your damn mind thinking Texas's defense is going to be better. It isn't. It is not.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
you're
we'll see.
insane.
Putting in a new system that takes time, if nothing else. And this is the fourth year
Yeah, I
OU
would.
the same defense again, installing the same defense. and you got veterans.
Jeff Shaw's got another good one, a good
Yeah,
surprise too. Zephyr Wafker is a bad dude. We talked about him earlier, but trying to I mean, we talked so much about the offense for the last 40 minutes. Really, I'd really like to, kind of. I think defensively speaking, I don't know that there's any surprises really, but it's man, there's just some. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're all playing very, very well. Maybe that they're going quicker than what you expected, but it just doesn't surprise me much anymore at this point. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
yeah. I think I posted this on my Patreon. Shout out for my Patreon if you guys want to read these kind of articles. One of the things is that the class of 2020, six kind of announced themselves in spring, and the class of 2027, 2025. Some of the guys who redshirted. I mean, C.J. Nixon was out there looking good in the spring game from reports I got. Tristan Haynes, the same thing. Marcus James, Trene Washington. You've just got Trent Wilson. All these kids that kind of redshirted, all were making we're making plays and look like they're going to be factors for the Sooners down the road. I mean, may not be this fall. But a lot of guys we saw in spring are going to start to be names we see in 2027 and beyond. That we got a lot of introductions, debuts from some guys that it bodes well for what's going on because we know the defensive coaches are just iterating and improving every year. Kids, they're just coaching, developing them up. I mean, Todd Bates' defensive tackles get better year over year, which makes it kind of scary to think about what Carrington and Wilson and Smith can be, in another year.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, they're probably not gonna. Yeah, you can't expect Tank to play a ton. I wouldn't because I mean, you're looking. I mean, listen, make no mistake. Trent Wilson and Nigel looked fantastic. They looked fantastic.
And Stoney and Jackson are coming back, so
Stoney and Jackson are coming back, and we know what they look like. And
yeah.
and Stoney was unreal last year when Jackson was hurt for a lot of the year, right? But they're definitely there. I mean, no shade on Dominic Williams, but these guys are on another level than that cat. They just are, right?
And we didn't even mention Ozawalu didn't play in the spring game, did he? He was held out. He was nicked up, so you didn't even get to see that cat. Didn't even get to see that cat who I think will give some reps at 3 Tech this fall. I think you'll see him based upon everything else that we've been hearing. Anything else that you guys want to mention about spring?
No,
All right.
not really. No, I think we're probably good on that. There's plenty. I mean, obviously there's. I just feel like it's a good step in the right direction, but I don't think that we should overreact and Monty. Shout out to Monty Cisco, but easy on the national championship talk.
Well, it's better that the offense look good in the spring game rather than some of the stuff we're hearing about Michigan.
And that's a fact. And really, if you assume, I get where he's going with it. I know what, and I've heard other people saying it too. Look, if assuming that this defense is what we expect it to be again, and this offense can just be pretty good, then yeah, you should be able to get there. Somebody asked in there what we think about ESPN and on 3. I think it was Hoosier Dave that's in there.
Yeah.
What do we think about ESPN and on 3 that not having Oklahoma making the playoff again? They didn't have them making the playoff last year either. And I think it's premature to say that stuff. We still haven't seen that. We still haven't seen Lane Kiffin do anything with and LSU. You could throw all those dudes together, but we'll see. You know what I mean? We'll see.
And if Levitt's foot is still screwed up, that creates massive problems for them.
I think it does too, and I think that you still, I don't know. They didn't really address running back much, and I don't know what they did. They lost the lineman that they had, and had to bring. Obviously they went out and got the number one, Jordan Seaton.
Yeah, who's a mercenary.
But that's one guy. It's one guy.
He's he's not exactly the ultimate team chemistry guy.
Right.
He
And then, there's questions about Alabama. There's certainly questions about, I would tell you that there's questions about Ole Miss. I think that they should be, they're definitely a contender. And look, as good as I think Texas aided themselves as far as playmakers are concerned on the offensive side, I don't know that they completely address their offensive line, and we'll see. They've been known to spit the bit. So,
I don't know that Floods. Floods had 2 bad years of offensive line, so we'll see how he does. Hey, Chris, is
my,
there?
I get it, bro. I get it. I get it, bro.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm gonna keep it a little. I'm not ready to proclaim that yet, but I will say this, and I think somebody else said it. You're not gonna be able to argue. There's definitely no excuses for John Mateer to not be better when the bullets start flying for real.
if they're running the ball better, the O line's playing better. He's got a consistent, cohesive offensive line week over week. Yeah, I think that he will be a better quarterback with better pieces around him, and I think we've got good pieces around him. Okay, Chris, just one last comment. You felt like, just a last spring comment, Chris, you mentioned to me sort of in our green room that you felt like the wide receiver group, once it's all, and we know that Livingston and Harris are this isn't Giovanni Gibson injuries, right? They're able, Livingston played in the game. Elijah Thomas was out
He
there, I
got open
think.
in the game too. He just didn't get hit.
Yeah,
You
we
know.
know that Harris seems to be something simple. They expect those 4 guys to be in the mix. Okay, Chris, you think this could be the best wide receiver group of the Brent era?
They have the potential, and I think that some of the things that Arbuckle wants to run, it's interesting because I think that the personnel that you have this year will be, they could potentially be a lot more explosive, especially around Satania. And that's going to be a piece right there because people are going to have to keep eyes on what they're doing with Satania because Satania is going to run right past people this year, especially in that slot position. Some of the things that he was doing out there, I was like, yeah, that's definitely going to translate and carry over into the season. But just the weapons that you have on the outside, again, like Jason and I were talking about, a point my uncle made. He was like, I thought that maybe last year with just the guys, to your point, Chris Mason, having 3 slots out there at once sometimes, right? You think that you'd be running kind of some rub routes, different things like that, tight bunch formations. We couldn't really get into a lot of that stuff because blocking on the outside with the tight ends or whatever wasn't necessarily there, right? Some of the different things that you want to run, the concepts or whatnot. But I think that with bigger
Sorry.
personnel that changes that, right? Go back to the LSU game, or not the LSU game, but to the Missouri game, right? Like, don't get me wrong, there were times where you're just like, hey, we got to connect on those, John, right? But throwing to a 6'3", 6'4" Manny Choice or Livingston or guys like that on the outside opposed to, 5'9", we say 5'10", but 5'9", 5'8", Dion Burks right on the outside. It's not necessarily a recipe for success every time, right? Especially with the bigger, taller
That's fair.
DBs. So I think it's a point as to there
Thank
are
God that they're not trying to do that this year, right?
yeah, there were times last year where yes, you could really critique Arbuckle. There were times where you could really critique Mateer, but there were a lot of times where you're like, hey, it's there. You just have to be willing to throw it, right? And I think that as the season went on, especially when Mateer being his hand, all the rest of those different things or whatever. An interesting point that was thrown out there. I forgot who it was in the national media was just there's a chance that BV really put his thumb on the offense as well and was just like, hey, our defense can win us the game. You guys can lose this game. Let's play concise, precise a little bit more. So I don't necessarily know if they dialed it all the way down, but I know that at times you just didn't necessarily have the personnel out there. Now the Bama game was an
He had some
outlier because
turnovers in the last few weeks, so he didn't have it all the way thumbed down on him.
yeah.
He was throwing interceptions. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I
so
mean, LSU game, there was some bad picks. I mean, definitely.
Yeah, part of that too, though. I mean, they were going down the field, is what I'm saying, though.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like,
right.
it wasn't necessarily. I don't think that all three of them were necessarily his fault. But
No, not
the
yeah.
first one was awful, awful, right? I mean, you know, at the end of the day, they didn't. It wasn't that. And at the end, here's the deal: he's they needed to take some stuff off of his plate, though,
Yeah.
and it looks like that's what they're doing. Whether or not he's going to be the guy or not, it's up to him. But I think you said it to me before. There's not going to be any excuses for it.
There's not going to be any excuses, but the biggest difference is, Jason, is that you have better personnel. I mean, if we're just
I
being
agree with that
frank,
100%. That's why I'm saying
yeah.
there's not going to
If
be
I'm
any
just being
excuses.
blunt, like I mean, I hope the kid goes and balls out at Cincinnati,
Me
but
too.
Devontae Gibson was just not. That was not it.
Well, he was hurt. He
He
was
was
hurt.
hurt coming. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
hurt. Couldn't get back. It was not it. You just didn't really have. You just. I mean, what you call it? Burks never really lived up to what we all thought
Never.
that he should have. So again, like I said, there's a difference between throwing to your 6'3", 6'4" guy who can make an explosive play on the outside when you're throwing those deep throws. So I mean, I'm just saying like the personnel wasn't necessarily there. The idea was there. Because again, to my point, to what I'm trying to say is that there were a bunch of times throughout the season where you say, "Hey, Arbuckle called a damn good game. We just can't execute. We don't necessarily have the personnel out there to execute something like this as far as what he wants to do." Yes, you can go back and look at the Washington State film, but you say, "Hey, different conference, way different conference," and you say, I mean, you could get it done at that level like that. But SEC football, no, that's not a guarantee every single time. Not a guarantee at all. But this year, I think you have better personnel, better weapons on the outside. You
Right.
should be able to hold up, and I think that if Mateer,
A better game plan overall, and to in order to, again, taking some of those things off of his plate, not running so
mhm,
much RPO where you've got him having to make all these decisions, and then because he's not great at that part, he just takes off. You can't listen. I will say this again. The part of the reason I brought up Bo Bentley not looking very good was because you cannot afford to get him hurt. He's what you have. He better. We got to keep him upright.
Yeah, you need to reduce the number
If
of
you
hits
if,
he
if we're going to
takes.
start talking about national championships and playoffs, Mateer stays healthy all year.
Oh yeah,
He
you
has to.
can't you can't lose your quarterback. No team. I don't know that many teams can pull off what LSU what Ole Miss did last year with the Simmons to the Simmons gets hurt and then they all of a sudden they pull out the number three quarterback in America was just sitting on their bench. But yeah, I think you take you. I mean, we forget that. I'm not don't know that we forget, but we just sometimes don't always remember that Baker had a kick-ass running game. So did Kyler. Even Rattler had a good supportive running game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Caleb's 1 year. Kennedy Brooks went crazy for what, like 1,500 yards or something
Kennedy
like
was a
that.
bad dude that year, bro.
And
Bad dude.
then in Dylan Gabriel's first year, Eric Gray had 1,500 yards. So
Sure.
you need to, if we're going to be successful, we need to have some conglomeration of our running backs take playmaking and big plays out of John's, some percentage of this stuff out of
And
his
again,
hands.
that was in the Big 12. We're talking about the SEC now.
Yeah, so we're exactly with better defenses and better defensive ends, better D lines. So yeah, I mean, I think overall, if you can use these up, I mean, the one lingering question that we don't know about is, will we use the full wide receiver core as we should? Right? Should we play this many? Should we play more guys? Get as many guys in? Jasir Rogers looked exciting, right? We don't want to see. I don't want to not see him getting some game plays, right? We don't. We want to see Elijah Thomas healthy, actually out there, being able to get the ball and things like that. So
the interesting part is again, like I said. It's the formations, Chris Mason, man. You saw four wide out there a whole bunch of times, man. We say 12 personnel, but they're out there in four wide running a lot of different things, and they had some of the same plays they wanted to run, some of those jet sweeps. And guess who was running those? It wasn't Satania. It was Jasir Rogers and Elijah Thomas. So I think you're going to see different personnel out there this year. I think that you'll see, and I think that obviously as the season we get to the middle part of the season, especially at Georgia game or whatnot, you kind of got to start circling the wagon. You got to do that first circle of the wagon to
Right.
figure out who are my guys that I need to have on the field an awful lot. So I really think those things are going to bode well for that wide receiver room because I think there's a bunch of guys who can make plays, and I think it's going to be really competitive down the stretch. So wouldn't necessarily watch to see who runs out there against UTEP, but I would definitely be looking around, especially game four. Michigan as well. Not going to sleep on them, but I'd definitely be looking for what they who is on the field a lot in that game in Athens.
All right, we want to chop up a little NFL draft.
It's a little bit.
All right. So obviously, R. Mason Thomas will be the first Sooner taken. I think that's based upon what I'm seeing right now. There's a mini run on defensive ends right now.
Yeah, there is I mean, Jason, you kind of being our national guy. I mean, I've watched them too, but I don't necessarily know if I'm liking the second edge rusher from Miami and this the pass rusher
UCF.
from UCF. Not necessarily know if I'm liking that more than I like what I saw from R Mason. If I'm just being honest, maybe that's biased, but yeah.
100%. No, 100%. I think it's wild that if anything, I think obviously R. Mason's a little undersized for a NFL edge guy, but the dude is the real deal. I mean, all you got to do is look at his numbers for the past 2 years. Uh, I think he's not going to make it past the first 10 picks of the second round,
No,
and
not with this
it wouldn't
run.
be a surprise. It wouldn't be a surprise if he ended up um, obviously coming into the first round, but I mean he's starting to run out of picks here. But yeah, the UCF kid, that's wild to me. And even honestly, they were talking about at number two when they went and got the Texas Tech guy. They were talking about a guy that hasn't played. Obviously the Ohio State kid that has been a linebacker. He's not a freaking edge guy, and that's what they're projecting him as. And obviously, you like him as a linebacker too, but come on, man. This we're talking about real production, and he's a showstopper. R. Mason is in the story, right? I mean, I think it's pretty wild. It again, like you said, uh, how you come up with a guy like the kid from the kid
You,
from there from UCF is wild, wild.
yeah, and were you surprised Ty Simpson went as early as he did with the Rams?
Yes, very much so. I think that was a reach, a big reach. He was going to be around for a while. I would think.
They could have jumped back, got some capital,
I
and
would think.
and
Right?
drafted him. Okay,
I think so. I mean, pick 13. That's way early.
yeah. So so it looks like R. Mason Thomas. I think probably the next guy will be Grayson Halton. Then I think it's probably Burks or Waywu next,
Yeah.
probably. Um,
Yeah, I don't know that they're all going to get drafted. Obviously, I think you're going to end up with maybe what 7 or 8 of them get drafted total. I don't know though. You're starting to hear some stuff about Jaron Canick possibly going in the earlier, top 4 rounds anyway because of his skill set. I don't know that he's going to translate as a full on tight end, but these days in the NFL, you have pass catching tight ends and blockers. And so he doesn't really have to be a blocker at the next level. I think that they love the fact that he ran in the 4.4s at the OU Pro Day. His hands are fantastic. And man, if you go back and go back and look at his high school film where he's breaking, just running straight through dudes.
yeah,
I mean, he's just the guy, and he can run away from you, but he's got great hands and he's got a nose for the end zone. playing defense, I think, helped him, find openings. I thought he was way underutilized last year. I wish that Mateer would have looked his way more, you know, um, because he was finding soft spots an awful lot. He knows where those are going to be. Um, but I think that there's somebody could take a flyer on him in the third or fourth round, maybe. But I don't know that all these guys are going to go, and I don't know how early Burks ends up going. He maybe what fourth round, third, fourth round, too.
So a lot of receivers going early, so it's possible. But the guy I wonder that this name I think may go undrafted that surprised me the most. I think is Kendall Daniels. I think just he didn't test at all. I think he was nursing an injury, so he didn't put out the 40 time that I thought that he would put up. So I think that maybe he'll be an undrafted free agent, and I'm hoping Dom Williams gets drafted. But I think there's a chance that depending because of just his shorter height, there's a chance that he might
Yeah,
also be an undrafted. I think he'll make an NFL roster just because he's a run
sure.
stopper. I think they both have good
No,
chances.
he's a good player. He's a good player. I think
Yeah,
he's going to play, but he may not get drafted though. But that sometimes sometimes it's better to be an undrafted free agent than it is to be a last two
six or
rounds
seven.
guy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you get on better teams, and you get in better situations with your money.
yeah. So I think we want that pick 25. The Bears, who were someone I think one of the ESPN guys mocked the Bears picking R. Mason Thomas, and they just picked the Oregon safety. So I don't see that. I don't see R. Mason going today. I don't think it's going to happen. But I think
Doesn't
that's.
seem like it.
But that's. But I think the
I was
interesting.
expecting a lot for him to go in the first round. He's a
Yeah.
little undersized, and again, he was hurt for a large portion of last year.
Second half of the season after Tennessee games
Yeah,
and
I mean, and,
everything.
and again, and he was the first 2 years of his career. He was too. They look at stuff like that.
They do. I mean, it's so the two edges that they've got ahead of him. The Falk kid from Auburn's falling, which is kind of weird because that kid's a beast. But no
Yeah, I don't
production,
understand that at all. He's a
lim-
bad dude.
limited
Wow.
production. They got T.J. Parker and the Cassius Howe guy from A&M, or T.J. Parker from Clemson and Cassius Howe from A&M are still on the board at edge. So I don't think
What
that
happened with Mikhail Lemon? Why is he not gone yet?
he
He
has.
did. He did.
But
He did.
he fell a little bit. He had some
Yeah.
weird interviews in Indianapolis, like kind of like strange guy a bit. That's kind of the rap he got, and he didn't fall greatly. I don't think. I mean, I think he was the third wide receiver taken. So
Yeah, and
I don't.
Concepcion just went
Yeah,
in one of the last
Conception.
few picks.
Yeah. So so if you were wanting Concepcion and you couldn't get him, if you're in the third round, I think if you're a team that was looking for that kind of slot speed,
Yeah.
Burks could slide to someone there. I think it's all going to depend.
I think that he just didn't. I don't know, man. I think he was definitely in the wrong position last year, not
Yeah,
playing in a slot. But I don't know, man. I just don't understand what I haven't seen what everybody else has seen. I guess.
yeah. I mean, there's definitely mixed opinions on him. So guys, if I told you that OU could have 10 guys drafted next year, would you buy that?
For sure next year. For sure next year. Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. Easy.
And
I mean, think about it. St- I mean, unless they don't come back, Jaden Jackson and Stoney are out. I
yep,
mean,
Taylor
you
Wine's
know they're
probably
gone.
out. Taylor Wine's
Kip,
probably out.
Kip, Taylor Wine. I
Heineke,
mean, Heineke
no,
for
Peyton
sure.
Peyton Bowen,
Yeah, Peyton Bowen's going to be a first round pick probably. I mean,
and then on the off,
you might have three. You might have three first round picks next year,
it's
three or
possible.
four. With Satania, I mean, if Satania has another year like he did, maybe does he move up into the first round? Maybe second. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he would. He certainly. I mean, he looked great in the spring game, and he looked. I mean, he certainly could
That
be
track
poised.
speed, they love that track speed, man.
He's certainly poised for. He certainly looks like he's poised for a big senior year. So, but you look at the offense. You have maybe Hayden Hansen, Marion Harris, Makala. I think there's a chance Mateer gets drafted.
If he has the kind of season that, well, there's still a lot of people that like him
yeah,
and like the type of player that he is, and
he's got the intent. He's got he's got
uh,
some of the intangibles. He has that. He's definitely a leader.
sure, yeah, and I mean, if there's a lot of people that they just immediately are going with the injury, and I agree that you can't throw the ball that well with a broken thumb,
yeah. So we'll see. But I
which
think it's
makes me again question why he was throwing it. But
or
that being
yeah.
said, I mean, at the end of the day, if he plays better this year and they, take enough off of his plate and he manages the game better, yeah, he's going to get drafted.
Yeah, it looks like we could be poised for some back to back high quality first round kind of drafts coming up. I mean, I think Stone and Wine could be first round picks.
I mean, Jaden Jackson wouldn't be. I mean, whew. I mean, if he has the kind of season that he had as a freshman,
Well, yeah, we could see that if he's, we could see that. That's definitely possible.
and I mean, does Danny Okoye hang around for very long if he has a big breakout year?
Well, if he has the year that means if he has the kind of year where the draft is a real potential for him versus coming back and being
Because he's
even
first round
higher.
talent.
Yeah,
His
yeah.
talent is first
Yes.
round, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if he goes out there and has 16, 17 sacks,
Well, yeah, if he breaks the OU sack record and is that
yeah,
disruptive, then yeah, if he's going into the draft, our defense has had an awesome year and
fantastic season. Yep.
has been incredibly disruptive, and that's after the year we just had. So, but yeah, I mean, you just think about Fasusi and Cortland Guillory kind of trending that way too. It's you could just the talent level in Norman just seems to be on the rise.
Kip Lewis, I mean, again, I think he's heart and soul of the defense.
Yeah. So okay, all right. You guys got anything else?
I don't.
Oh man, I gotta get back on the road, and I'm a little worried about being in tornadoes, man.
Yeah, we just kept seeing all this stuff about Enid. That's pretty scary.
Yeah, I'm south of there, but I don't know, man. You never know where they're gonna pop up.
So, all right.
Weirds
Well,
me out.
guys, we'll be back next week with another Sooner Intel, and we'll be back on Monday night with a recruit Intel because I'm pretty sure OU's going to have a commitment on Monday that we'll be talking about. So,
9:40 p.m. Texas still sucks.